Hey, Block 5. Okay, so this is that video I was going to make for you guys just to wrap up our lesson that we couldn't finish in class today. And Aristotle, this is for you too, since you missed a lot of what we were doing today. Okay, so you guys, we made it through this, and you learned about the background, what was going on in those 50 years before this war takes place. Aristotle, at this point, you might want to just kind of pause the video and take a look at what we got here. And we also went through the situation about what was happening in New England at that time so long ago. Some important numbers there, I think, to kind of show you the difference between the two different groups. A map showing some of the praying towns, colonial settlements, and also, just remember, because Aristotle, we said this in class, that one of the reasons why this is such a destructive war is because there's no boundaries or borders, really. Everybody's living around each other, so when all heck breaks loose, it's just fighting all over the place. Okay, and I can't remember, group, if this is what we got to or not, but why they're fighting. So on the native side, Philip's side, there's four things there that are important. I'd put number one up there with Metacom seeing his lands shrinking. He and other leaders from other tribes are noticing that their ancestral lands are much smaller. And part of this is due, if you look at the last bullet point, like number 2, for unfair trading practices. Indian people were being taken advantage of in some cases. It did happen. Then I put like a 3 and a 4 on the next two bullet points there with a star. What is this really all about? Is to preserve a way of life for Philip and his people, their traditions, their culture, and they were fighting to not become second-class citizens in their own country. Remember, a second-class citizen is somebody who's not as equal to the rest of citizens. They're kind of pushed away, discarded, pushed to the side. The word I used was marginalized. You're just not relevant anymore. No one's going to consult you and your people about important things. And they're not wanting that to happen. Over by the English, well, there's more and more people coming over, so there's that desire to continue to expand, and they need more and more land for that. Well, as we just said with the native people, they're seeing that land is shrinking. English want more and more and more. Native people looked at the English as being very greedy for land. For the English, it's to dominate New England. It is. And they want to promote their way of life, which is also including spreading Christianity. And indeed, a lot of native people do join with the English, living side by side in some of those towns. It wasn't necessarily bad. It's just that Philip and his people were alarmed at how many people are leaving and wondering, are we still going to be here 10, 20 years from now? There's also the increase in trade, to try to continue to trade. Trade creates wealth. People want to be prosperous. And in the way of that, like to Josiah Winslow, sorry about that, had a little glitch. That with that trade, increasing trade, for Josiah and others, they're just like, the native people just seem to be in the way of that, the way of all of this. All right, so that's why they're fighting. And I realized this might not be in order in your sheet. I just kind of changed it. The people involved. I think you kind of know a lot of this now. See Metacom. He's not the only Indian leader. There are others, but we focused on him. He's Wampanoag. There were other Wampanoag people with him. And you can see some of the other tribes that are with him too. I'm not going to expect you to have to memorize or know those. On a quiz or a test, I usually put those things there for you. On the English side, of course, Josiah Winslow is one of the leaders. There are others. This is one. Militia are used. In that time in American history, there is no professional army. There's no English soldiers here from over in Europe. It's just militia, which are shopkeepers and farmers with guns. who practice every once in a while. They have some training, but very little. Usually made up of men from a town or an area. And the English do have some Indian friends. You can see that the Mohawk and Pequot are there. So the Mohawk, very powerful. They are a tribe that's to the west in what we now call New York, and they are the easternmost Iroquois tribe. And you'll hear about the Iroquois more. They're a very powerful confederacy at that time in our history. All right, there's the sides, and let's wrap it up by looking at, okay, what's the result? And result's tragic for Native people. If you look along the left-hand side, they lost. They do become second-class citizens in their own country. They are irrelevant. By the time we talk about the American Revolution, you're not really talking about Native people in New England anymore. The English cracked down on some of the Native traditions, like they couldn't speak their language and things like that. People would be in trouble for doing that. Many Indian villages destroyed, thousands died, many are shipped into slavery in the West Indies, and you know what happened to Metacom. Over on the English side, they do win, but it does come at a great cost. Remember, at the start of this war, there's over 100 towns in New England at that time. It's believed that half of those were attacked. And half of those that are attacked, about 1/4 of all towns, were destroyed. And another quarter of towns were heavily damaged. Now I made a mistake here. It's not many hundreds of English. There's actually thousands of English that die in this thing. They believe over 2,000 people died, if not more. Almost no families untouched. Kids lost parents, orphaned. Parents lost kids. Families lost lots of dads and husbands and sons who were fighting. So, and of course, Native families completely, feeling the pain of all this. Yes, at some point, many colonists boarded ships and went back to England. I don't know how many, though. And one little final fun fact there, it is considered to be the deadliest war in colonial American history, up to the time that we call the Road to Revolution, where events start to happen leading to our revolution. Well, that's 100 years later, 75 years later. Okay, that's it. All right, good luck studying for your test.